Good evening. I am Margot Fox. I'm the Senior Director of Engagement and Education at the Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis, and thrilled to have you join us tonight. Like many of you, I'm navigating the 5781 high holidays in a whole new way. Just like Jews around the world, there are many stories coming out of the Jewish world about how communities are adapting to this time in history. And as you see our rabbis and clergy joining us for our panel, you'll see who will be joining us tonight to share this discussion. In the spirit of the month of Elul, which is a time of heightened spiritual connection and reflection leading up to Rosh Hashanah and the holidays, we thought it'd be beneficial to check in with our clergy and allow us to check in with ourselves to see how they and their congregations are managing this trip to virtual high holidays and to see what we can take from this experience. So thank you all for joining us. The format tonight is pretty simple. We have our panelists. We'll be asking each panelist to address a specific set of questions that we've shared with them ahead of time, and then we will discuss them as a panel. Then there will be, after we're done having the panelist conversation, Marcia Goldstein will be monitoring a Q&A session. So while your video and audio will not be active during the session, you do have the opportunity to post questions on the button on the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. So feel free during the course of the evening to submit your questions, and then we will get to as many of them as we can. So that is our format for the evening. Thank you, everybody. I first want to introduce our panelists in the order in which they will be sharing their time with us tonight. So first, I'm going to introduce you to Rabbi Justin Kerber. Rabbi Kerber is a graduate of Columbia University in New York City, and his journey to the rabbinate began as a Sherut La'am volunteer in Israel, where he mentored high school seniors in a youth agricultural village and boarding school. He was ordained at the Cincinnati campus of Hebrew Union College, the Jewish Institute of Religion, in 2007, and has served as a Hillel director. So we have 3 former Hillel professionals on this call, including myself and Cantor Melissa, the rabbi of Temple Emmanuel in St. Louis, and also as a chaplain at the Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital in St. Louis. In addition to his passion for Judaism, he loves music, travel, reading, and film, and is the husband to Hope and dad of Eli and Danny. Rabbi Sendrow has joined us. He's joining me up here in Carmel. A couple of us are up here in Carmel, and he is the rabbi at Congregation Shaarey Tefilla and has been there since August of 2010. A native of Philadelphia and an avid Phillies fan. He grew up as a Boy Scout, eventually went to college, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts and with honors in Jewish Studies from Gratz College in Philadelphia, and attended the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College for his ordination. He served his first pulpit in Southwest Florida for 18 years, and during that time, joined the conservative movement's Rabbinical Assembly. Here in Indianapolis, he's an adjunct professor of Bible at Butler University, and also writes for the Jewish Daily Forward's Rabbinic Roundtable. He lives in Carmel with his wife, Arlene, and their 3 children, Evan, Sammy, and Rachel, and also has a large musical background, playing the euphonium with the local wind ensemble and his guitar. I had to point out that he's a Phillies fan too, because he's giving up a Phillies game to be here with us tonight. We appreciate that. Cantor Melissa Cohen has been the Cantor Congregation Beth-El Zedeck since 2015. She's a native of Lakewood, New Jersey, and her love for Judaism began as a kid at Solomon Schechter Academy in New Jersey. As a young student, she was active in USY and many other activities in the Jewish world. She attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and earned her Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance, and then went to DePaul University to earn a Master's of Music in Vocal Performance. She believes that music is a universal language of prayer and spirituality, and creates meaningful and inclusive services by honoring the musical traditions of the past and blending them with new and contemporary styles. She has a rich soprano voice and honest performing and has been featured in operas and concerts throughout the United States, Europe, and Israel. She's a trustee of the board of directors of the Booth Tarkington Civic Theater in Carmel and has also served on steering committees with the Indianapolis Opera and also the Indianapolis Children's Choir. She's a member of the Cantor's Assembly CICA program and looks forward to completing her studies. She is married to Dr. Mark Cohen and is the proud parent, and they are the proud parents of Sadie and Evan. And newest to our rabbinic community in Indianapolis is Rabbi Jordana Chernow-Reader. She's excited to be joining the clergy team. She joined last month Indianapolis Hebrew Congregation's team. She's been a rabbi for the past 10 years, first as the director of lifelong learning at Temple Beth Torah in Ventura, California, and then rabbi educator at Anshe Chesed Fairmont Temple in Beechwood, Ohio. A native of Southern California, she very much enjoys living in the Midwest. Her focus as a rabbi is on 4 main areas: creating welcoming worship services that embrace the joy and peace of Shabbat and reflecting on prayers, using Jewish text and tradition as a guide to living in the modern world, and has a deep commitment to social justice, particularly around women's issues, criminal justice reform, and mental health access. She and her husband, Luke, having just moved here, he's a professor in the Department of History at Case Western Reserve University, and they have 2 children, Julian and Eleanor. So welcome. Thank you all. And those are just snippets of their very rich bios. So thank you all for joining us. So we're going to start off tonight with Rabbi Justin. So our first set of questions for you. Each of you are in the midst of preparation for the most important holidays of the year, the ones that are personally and physically demanding, as well as the ones that draw the most attention. So how is the current situation affecting your preparation? And are there personal practices that you are especially focusing on or elevating this year as you personally prepare? And this kind of helps us have the conversation about the professional side of your life, but also personally, what are you bringing to this experience this year?
Yeah. So thanks for having me tonight, Margot. It's a real pleasure to join this panel and speak to our community. Well, you asked what are how is the current situation affecting preparation, and how are there personal practices? Well, the first thing I have to say is a couple years ago, I found out that in Japan, they have dozens of flavors of Kit Kat candy bars. And ever since then, I've been obsessed with Japanese Kit Kats. And my wife just walked into the house and brought me an apple pie flavored Kit Kat, which I think totally goes with apples and honey and the whole theme of spiritual preparation. So I thought I'd mention that. I'll say that it's very time consuming making our services short enough to fit into a Zoom webinar. Our illustrious President Judy Weitzman points out that it never says in the Torah that it's okay to have a Zoom call that goes longer than an hour. I think it was Voltaire who said, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one. That's been very challenging, trying to condense what our most sacred days are all about into not only the time, but into this, to compress it all into the frame of a computer screen. I'll mention that it's been, that the current situation is one of great tension. I'm sure that comes as a surprise to nobody. There is a lot of tension in the air in our world. And I am feeling the tension between preaching messages that are relevant to the times without being polarizing to the audience. I'm probably not the only one feeling that. And I am also feeling a tension in having to use a lot of creativity just to build and sustain the illusion of an ordinary High Holy Day service. As far as personal practices that we're especially focusing on or elevating, I have a shofar behind me for one reason. I try to sound it every day during Elul. And my wonderful song leader educator, Juliet Naring, and I have created a series that we're calling Elul Encounters, a Path of Reflection. We've jointly called it. It's in response to this challenge of having to abbreviate our services. The 3 sessions for me, I've led 2 of them so far. They've been about the Uvechein paragraphs in the Rosh Hashanah Tefilla, in the High Holy Day Tefillot, in the Amidah portion of the service. the Avodah service, and in 2 weeks I'll do my last one on the Eila Azkara, the Martyrology. So taking the opportunity to dwell in these ikarim, these crucial pieces of the liturgy that we've chosen to declare tefel, with additional this year. Truthfully, you know, these pieces, I think of them as centerpieces, but they're not always the focus in a normal year, whatever that is. Anyway, each one of these reflections has raised questions for me for my own spiritual preparation in this new year, especially the relationship between guilt and sin. And is a guilty feeling necessarily the indicator of a sin or a transgression that has to be repented? And it also raises for me a hard question about leadership and tension between unity and action. Kind of brings me back to where I began.
Thank you. Any thoughts from anybody else on our panel about kind of your personal preparation and personal things that you're doing to elevate yourself during this period? Cantor Melissa, do you have a comment?
So yes, so hi everybody, I'm Cantor Melissa Cohen. So at Beth-El Zedeck, we are doing something a little bit similar with preparation with Elul. And we are offering what we're calling Elul moments, and they are going live each week. We've had 2 so far with the onset of Rosh Chodesh Elul. To enable all of our people to be able to focus on what we can do to prepare for the holidays, which we know are different this year. And it might feel different for people to get in the mood. It's, you know, knowing that we're not going to get to go to our shuls and sit in the pews is feeling different for people. And so how do you prepare when you're going to be sitting in your living room or sitting at your dining room table? And so it allows people to put things in perspective. Maybe thinking about creating where are going to be your sacred spaces in your home, for example. And so you can use that time. So we began with a shofar blast with expressions from Rabbi Sasso, and then from Rabbi Greenspan to think of words about Torah and keeping us going in the direction towards Tishrei. And this week I'll offer some music, some sweet music to bring in the new year, and then we'll have some mindful movement for next week to wrap up our Elul moments. And so these are ways that can connect us into getting in the spirit of preparation. Maybe something that we don't normally think about in you know, like Rabbi Justin was saying, in a normal year, whatever that is.
I think too, thank you. I think too, Rabbi Justin, you pointed out, you used the word guilt, and I think that there's always a lot people put on themselves around Jewish observance and tradition. And this year is a good year to kind of allow yourself some flexibility, because this is where we are. So how do we find the space to be where we are and be thoughtful about that? And I think it's really important to call that out, right? So thank you, thank you. So another centerpiece of the High Holiday experience is, what are we going to learn from our clergy? What are our sermons going to be like? And so I'm going to turn to Rabbi Sendrow, because the sermons that our clergy deliver to us at the High Holidays are important for many, many reasons. Not only is it typically a larger audience than we may see on the average Shabbat, but we know also that folks are looking to our clergy for those words of wisdom. So how do you decide what to address in any given year, and particularly this year? How is the current situation played into how you're preparing for your sermon? What are some of the challenges that you're facing that are specific to this year, and how are you overcoming those challenges?
Great questions. I would add to what my colleague Rabbi Justin said the following, and I specifically waited until it was my turn to address the sermon issue. There are ways in which becoming a rabbi messes up your personal Jewish life. One of those ways is my biggest focus for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are my high holiday sermons. And sometimes it pushes away time for personal preparation that I used to really enjoy. I spend literally from when I'm breaking my fast at Yom Kippur till the next Rosh Hashanah trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about. I literally start, I can't help myself. I start wondering about it as soon as I finish my last talk on Rosh Hashanah. On Yom Kippur. And I've said to Christian colleagues in the past, I assume that your major sermons are Christmas and Easter. That's when you get the biggest attendance. And of course, they've said, yes, that's correct. I tell them that what rabbis go through during this holiday season is 5 Christmas/Easter level sermons in 10 days. They're very happy that they're not rabbis at that point. The current situation has played into my sermon prep. By current situation, I assume you mean COVID. I will definitely devote a sermon to lessons that we can derive from the COVID situation. Are there challenges that this year have been specifically created? Yes, having nothing to do with COVID. I usually devote one of the 5 High Holy Day sermons to Israel. And this year, there's big news. There's a new peace treaty with the UAE. But in the current political climate, I am tentative about speaking about Israel at all. My pulpit is politics free, except for advocation for the state of Israel. I will always advocate for Israel and generally do so on the holidays. But even a simple thing like mentioning the peace treaty or the fact that the embassy is in Jerusalem, that could be seen as a political statement in this election year. And I hate the fact that I'm considering not talking about Israel, but I may not talk about Israel. The most important thing is this, and my wife reminds me of this every year, God bless her. I try for at least 3, if not all sermons, to be what my wife calls lifey. She doesn't want to hear me talk about the ins and outs of the situation in the Middle East. She doesn't want to hear me go into a long, detailed drash on the Torah reading for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. She likes it when I'm talking about things that have to do with our everyday lives. And she's right. Those are the ones that can really come from the heart. We have a saying, what comes from the heart enters the heart. So I try and devote sermons to things like drawing on past subjects. How do we live during a fearful time? How do we deal with our fears? How do we deal with disappointment in life? How do we deal with loss in life? How do we deal with life in general? So those are my goals, and I try to be creative about how I reach those goals. As of this moment, and my editing will continue literally until the morning of Erev Rosh Hashanah. I'm just obsessive about it, compulsively so. But as of this moment, my favorite sermon is one about Mozart's Serenade number 10 in B-flat major. And if you're wondering, how does that turn into a Jewish sermon? I'll give you one little clue. 2. I'm only going to talk about the third movement and watch the movie Amadeus. But I promise you, I will not end in the same place I've begun. Mozart will take us somewhere. I know exactly where I want him to take us, and he'll do it beautifully.
Well, that's a great lead in to my next question for Cantor Melissa. But before that, so I'm curious to know if you found yourself, Rabbi Sendrow, do you find yourself going to specific texts when you're preparing? And are they different this year than in other years, or it's just?
Ever since my ordination, I've stopped pleasure reading. There's no such thing as reading purely for pleasure. There is always the question in the back of my mind, is there a sermon here? When I was a rabbinical student, one of the greats of the conservative movement, Rabbi Sidney Greenberg, Oliver Shalom, who was a great anthologizer and a great preacher, said to us, you have to write your sermons with a newspaper in one hand and a chumash in the other hand. And he meant it in a very different way than the way I'm taking it this year. This year, the newspaper is not giving me things, it's telling me to stay away from, again, because of the political animosity that is permeating so much of our society this year. But it varies, Margot, from one year to the next. I do not have go-to texts because that would mean I'm doing variations of the same theme every year. And one thing I can say with pride is I have never repeated a sermon in my life, high holiday or otherwise. So I'm always looking for new ideas, new sources. And I start that list on Yom Kippur and I add to it and I scratch off it. And then around this time of year, I sit down to write. I'm never successful writing high holiday sermons in July. I've done it, but I either cut them down and make them into Shabbat sermons or I throw them in the trash because by the time Rosh Hashanah comes along, they're no longer fresh for me. And got to be fresh, got to come from the heart. Self-exhortation often produces the best sermons, by the way.
Good to know. Thank you. So that leads us into the musical part of our service. So for many people, the music is their touchstone also to the experience of the high holidays. I grew up as a kid, my dad's on this call. I grew up watching him and hearing him sing in the choir in Concord, New Hampshire at our temple. And I'm the granddaughter of somebody who used to say, oh my gosh, they changed the tunes every time they changed something at Chizuk Emunah in Baltimore. So Cantor Melissa, you know well the emotion that music creates and the expectation for folks who are attending high holiday services. I talked to a congregant at Beth-El who just said, I just want to hear the tunes, right? So tell us how the current situation has affected your choice of music, and are there changes that you're finding that you need to make personally to create a musically rich environment?
First of all, I want to thank you, Margot, and the Federation for asking me to be a part of this panel, and a special welcome to Rabbi Jordana and being part of our community, and for being with my other colleagues this evening, Rabbi Kerber and Rabbi Sendrow. Thank you. First of all, to answer your question, Margot, yes, the current situation has definitely affected my musical choices for this year's High Holy Day services, but not the way that you might think. And I will say that it's radical what my outlook is, my overall outlook that we've come to agree on. Many of my colleagues around the country are working very hard to make great changes to their services and to their outlines, and working very hard. You know, when people say that they need to make changes and modifications, you think very dramatic changes. And, you know, I'm thinking, just like you said, you know, coming from somebody who says, oh, they changed the tune. And I get that. I changed a melody a couple of years ago, and I'm still hearing about it, but, you know, that's the way it is sometimes, right? What I will say is that is not going to happen this year in our empty sanctuary, and it's not what you are going to hear from the comfort of your homes. My idea and my overall outlook for the music is radical, because what we're doing is going to be very simple. It's going to be just the melodies that people expect. It's going to be the fan favorites, the basics and the standards, the melodies that transcend time and space and bring you back to the place, your high holy day comfort zones, your high holy day happy places, and give you all the feels that make you feel the holiday. For most of our people, this will be our beautiful Max and May Simon Sanctuary. Maybe it's the Kaufman Schuchman Chapel, where we deliver our Salichot services. And maybe others, it might bring them back to a time at 34th and Ruckel in the sanctuary, a time well before me, when Chazanim of blessed memory before me set an extremely high musical standard of excellence at Beth-El Zedeck, you know, now in its over 100-year history. That's on my shoulders to have to live up to. And so with the latest advancements and technologies, this year, our congregants will have the opportunity to live stream our services from the comfort, and I will say safety, of their homes. Will it be the same being there with us in person? Nope. But we're doing what's necessary to observe to observe pikuach nefesh and preserving human life and being socially responsible, doing what's needed here. I do not feel that the rich musical environment that our congregants have come to expect will be compromised, though. What I can promise is that the quality of the music will still be rich, because it's going to be sung with kavanah, and it's going to be sung with great intention and sincerity, as it always is. I am blessed that we have a sanctuary that is extremely expansive, and while we can't host our entire congregation in that space, we are able to make an accommodation where I will still be able to have our organist of many, many years joining me to provide additional support with the music, and also the addition of 3 additional voices so that we can have some harmonies, and they'll be all socially distanced in a way that we'll be able to make things work in the safest way. Listen, we're not reinventing the high holy days. We are reimagining the high holy days. And it's all about, you know, to use the title of this panel, it's about creating balance, right? Like between the spiritual and the virtual. And so we're not reinventing this. Our people have been observing and celebrating these holidays for centuries. And through times of persecution and war and plague and even pandemic, we can do this. We can still observe our holiest days even during this time. It's up to us. And maybe in the future, people will look back to us and say, this is how they did that. So for me, it's about providing and creating the music in a way that people will be able to sit wherever they have created sacred space in their own homes and sing along with me and say, okay, this feels like Rosh Hashanah. Hearing an Avinu Malkeinu, hearing Hineni, hearing the Kol Nidre, hearing Unatana Tokef, or singing along with Ki Anu Amecha. It's going to be about the highlights. It's going to be about hearing the special nusach that we hear that sounds so familiar. During Elul, for example, Margot, you know, you come to our Zoom Friday night services now, and you are a regular typically at our services, and even, you know, throughout Elul at the end of Lecha Dodi, just to give a tam of what this time period feels like. I always end Lecha Dodi with the nusach of high holidays so that people can begin to prepare and feel what's coming and what's ahead. So all of that brings you to this place in time. Only music can do that. And so it's a really, it's a wonderful thing what music does. And, not for a competition, Rabbi Sendrow, but, 5 days of sermons and 5 sermons in 10 days, like that's the equivalent for the Chazan, right? 5 operas in 10 days, right? So that's the equivalent there. So it's a lot. And it will be different this year. And it's all I can quote in the Hineni prayer, which the Cantors sing at Musaf. There's a wonderful moment at the end, and I love Hineni. It's generally, it's supposed to be a cantorial masterpiece when most chazanim like to show off their chops. I will tell you, it's not my thing. That's not my moment when I do that. It's a very understated Hineni. And there's a little bit of a buildup to the moment when I say, Eheyeh asher eheyeh. And these are words from Exodus that God answers to Moses, where God says, I am that I am. And it just means, I'm just like you, I'm doing the best that I can. And that really is true. We clergy are just doing our part in all of this. We feel the same as all of you do. We are anxious about things. We are fearful. We do not want to be in empty sanctuaries. We want to be with you. I saw a question come up in the Q&A. We want to be with you. And so, but all I can say to all of this is Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I am that I am, and we can only do the best that we can do. And so from us, it's going to be very simple. We are going to give you the most beautiful tunes that that are familiar, and that you feel comfortable with to bring you to your sanctuary.
Thank you. It's interesting. I was thinking about the way you changed the Chadodi, because to me, when I heard that 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, here we are. We're getting ready. So full disclosure, I'm a member of Beth-El Zedeck, the wife of the president.
It's like a clock, and it's ticking down, and it's a gentle reminder.
Mm-hmm. It also speaks to something that I've thought of as I was hearing everybody, and Rabbi Jordana can comment on as well, is there are many tastes and sounds to the high holidays. There's the honey and the apple and the food that we're not addressing tonight, and all those pieces, and then the sounds and the words and the physical, right? So there's so many pieces to this that even though we're not in a sanctuary and in much smaller communities, we can access those things through all these different places and these different ways to do that. So Rabbi Jordana, welcome, welcome. This is your debut on Zoom. So thank you for joining us tonight. So as somebody who's new to our community and settling into a new community at an incredibly unique time without coffee dates, you're especially aware of how important it is to create welcoming spaces in a virtual high holiday environment. And all of our congregations are trying to manage this. As you work personally and as a member of a fairly large clergy team in a big congregation, how do you prepare to display hospitality and welcome over Zoom?
Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. It is such a joy to be here. Though this has been the weirdest welcome in the world to a new job and a new community. And if people have the opportunity to move in the middle of a pandemic, I would not recommend it. So just to keep that in mind. But despite all of that, I will say I've had a really warm welcome, and people really have tried to reach out to us and to my family and to make this as normal of a beginning as possible. Before I get to that, I just want to respond to a few of the things that I heard from my colleagues. First of all, we have also been struggling with the time of our services. I think we have spent many, many hours trying to condense that. So I definitely feel your pain, Rabbi Justin, over there. And I also keep a list all year of my High Holy Day topics. It's just kind of a running list that I keep going. And the closer we get to the High Holy Days, the longer that list becomes. But for me personally, I also try to address things that I kind of need to hear in my own life, and use that, or I'm hearing from friends that might be a clue to what other people need to hear. And it is definitely our pandemic that we're living through right now is definitely definitely shaping how I am approaching this High Holy Days and what I am planning to talk about. But to get to your question, I think what your question really gets to the heart of is how do we make it welcoming? And so much of the High Holy Days is all about community and sitting together during the High Holy Days and going to friends and family and dinners and lunches and all of that. And that is incredibly, incredibly challenging to do over Zoom. I think, honestly, in addition to all the other things, I think this is the hardest thing for us to do because nothing can exactly replicate what it's like to have dinner with loved ones and friends. I will say we are trying to find some opportunities to do that. There is a fabulous group at our congregation who is organizing a Zoom break fast. So at least people are not eating alone, but they are bringing their own food and sharing in the company of one another to help break the fast. We are also making opportunities for people to hear the shofar safely from their cars, but at least to do that in community, because I think there is this deep, very personal and really real longing to be together. I completely understand that. I will share in one of my prior congregations, nobody invited us over to break the fast. So after everything, after all the highs of the High Holy Days, after all of the energy that I had put out there, literally my family and I went to Chipotle to break the fast, and it was really, really sad. So I really especially understand the need to try to be with others and be with community. But it's hard. That is definitely, I think, one of the most challenging things that we are all facing, on a personal and a communal level this year. I will say as a team, we are definitely approaching it as a team. We are reaching out to different people to try to just check in with people by Zoom, by coffee dates, by emails, just to let people know that we are thinking about them, let people know that there is a community that is out there, even if we cannot physically be in the same place. So that's definitely another thing that we are doing. But again, I don't feel like we have any particularly great answers to it, but I feel like it is something that we're talking about and trying to check in with people because we know one of the things that really is the high for people is this opportunity to connect. So we are trying to be aware also of people's mental health and people's need to connect and find safe distance way to allow that to happen. And just a few other things about the ways I personally prepare for the holidays is this year I am writing about the Unatana Tokef. I think that is really the prayer for this year. You're really talking about that place and that question, that central question of who shall live and who shall die. So one of the things I have been doing is playing the Leonard Cohen Who by Fire song a lot in my preparation, but it's also been like running in my head even when I'm not intentionally playing it. I personally drink a lot of chai tea lattes as well. But I do think that one of the things that the whole pandemic in general has shown us is really helped us appreciate what the blessings that we do have in life. Who are those people that we're reaching out to? Who are those people we want to connect with? And how can we still find our blessings and appreciate our blessings even with the situation that they're in? So those are some of the ways we are trying to approach it, making a welcoming space in challenging circumstances.
Thank you. It's interesting. I've seen a lot also. I'm a Facebook person, so I'm showing my age, but I see a lot of my colleagues around the country sharing how they're preparing and clergy colleagues, how they're preparing and pre-recording things and doing this and that. And the idea of creating community, so much conversation about creating community that's been going since March, right? I think about your virtual break the fast is like what we all did. Many of us were able to do for Pesach, bringing people together, also whom we wouldn't otherwise be with. I would not have been with my Texan Canadian family in the same room, right? And so I think that also as we focus on the liturgical focus for the high holidays, like the break fast is a great opportunity. And I hadn't even thought about that. Like, oh, we could do that. Right?
Absolutely. And my parents, always have households of people. And I shared with Marcia that I suggested to them that they do a big Zoom thing. So now for second day of Rosh Hashanah, they're going to have like a staggered Zoom day to recreate the open house that they would normally have. And personally, you know, I live here, but my family does not. So the one blessing that we've had is way more time with my family than we normally have. We get together every single week and we play Zoom games, and my kids get to be with their cousins and I get to see my sisters. So again, in terms of the blessings category that this whole thing has brought, that is definitely a big one for me. So even with all the darkness, there's definitely this silver lining of connection that Zoom and other technologies has created.
Absolutely. I think the other piece that
I'm sorry.
Please.
That seems like a good moment to answer the question that Debbie Barton Grant raised in the chat about what you're going to miss most. For one thing, yeah, I'm really going to miss that live in-person schmoozing that you get during the downtimes before services and after services. And yeah, going to break the fasts and Rosh Hashanah afternoon gatherings and Tashlich and all the rest of it. Is so much of the experience is not the liturgy and not what happens in the synagogue and not the sermon. I'm gonna miss group singing so badly. I am just dying for it. Even though the plan is Juliet, my song leader, and I will be in the same space, socially distanced. I'm grateful for that, although it scares me a little, but it still won't be the same. And and the third piece does get to the set piece, the sermon. I do value having the live feedback of knowing where the message is landing with people, even as I'm giving it. I can tell sometimes when it's hitting home and sometimes when it's making people defensive, and sometimes I can alter it in real time and sometimes I can't. Sometimes I just have to go through with it, and that gets back to that tension of what's my role as the rabbi? Is it my job to teach? Is it my job to lead? Or is it my job to make everybody comfortable? Or all of the above at the same time? By the way, I'm very impressed by my colleague, Rabbi Sendrow's ability never ever to repeat a sermon. I find I repeat mine all the time, although never exactly. I'm always revisiting and tweaking and changing and flipping around and testing something out. And well, that sort of worked, but that sort of didn't. So let's try it again this way. And I guess you could argue I've never repeated one, but I've never repeated one verbatim.
That's great. Thank you. So now I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Marcia Goldstein, who is going to continue with the Q&A and see what we have kind of from the field, from the folks out there. As you were saying, Rabbi Kerber, it occurred to me right before we went live that I also can't see anybody but you guys. So there's lots of people out there that we can't interact with. And that felt a little weird, but I'm going to turn it over to Marcia to ask some more questions, and then you guys can pop in and out. Our colleagues behind the scenes will help with that.
Thank you, Margot. We're going to take some questions and do our best to go through as many of the answers as we can. Please put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We can make sure we keep them all in one place and try not to miss anybody's questions. And I'll take as many as we can in the time we have. Debbie Barton Grant asked a question that Rabbi Kerber, I believe you were the one that kind of mentioned it. I'd like to throw it out there though to everybody, because I think it's a two-part question and it's rich with a lot of things people are wondering. What will you miss most this high holiday season about us not meeting in person? And the corollary of that is, what opportunities or positives do we see about this new normal that we live in? So I'm going to open it up, and any of you are welcome to answer it.
So I'll go ahead and start. So I'm thinking about how this opens the virtual door, quite literally, to families to be able to get a peek at the room where it happens, so to speak. I'm a big Hamilton fan, everybody knows that. So, but the room where it happens is a really big place, and so often we actually don't have all of our families in one spot. You know, we have our littles in babysitting, and then we've got slightly bigger than littles doing some activities, and then we've got kids all the way up through high school doing all sorts of services, junior congregation and such. And they're not often in that room, in that big space. And so here's an opportunity where we have a moment for families of all ages and multi-generations to be able to sit with one another in the same room that they've created a sacred space to be able to be together. And because of the modifications that we are going to be making, that Rabbi Justin alluded to, we are, you know, we're able to make that even more possible. It will be possible for a smaller child to be able to sit through our services, which are not going to be, you know, what you would normally expect. We're not just gonna start and just go for 3.5 hours like we normally would. That's not what we're live streaming. It will be a different modified experience. So it will be possible for multi-generations to sit together and experience the holidays together in a way that we've never done before. So that to me is a silver lining. That is a positive.
Anyone else? Rabbi Sendrow?
Yes. Part of this answer will be in response to my holy colleague, Rabbi Kerber. I've never repeated a sermon, but I repeat themes constantly. I have my favorite go-to themes. Don't misunderstand. One of those themes, Marcia's heard me talk about this, is that we are not simply a community. We are Kahila Kadosha. We are a holy community, a sacred community. And although I think we have done a nice job of transferring that sense of community to Zoom, it's kind of like, you know, somebody baking a cake and showing it to you on Zoom. It's better than nothing, but you can't really taste the chocolate. And if you can't taste the chocolate, the experience just isn't the same. And it's that sense of sacred community that I'll be missing most this year.
Rabbi Jordana?
I would say a really similar answer. Like Rabbi Justin, I miss being able to stand around and talk to people during an oneg. Like I really miss that. And when I used to be the rabbi educator, one of my very favorite parts of the job was standing in the lobby on the Sunday morning and greeting all the families as they came in. So I'm so glad that we have Zoom, and it really is a wonderful thing, and this had made this whole experience so much less lonely for so many people. But I do look forward to a time when we can be face-to-face again and really connect in that personal, meaningful way again. And hopefully soon we will get there.
A couple of you have mentioned making your home a sacred space. Could one of you kind of elaborate about what you're suggesting people do in order to turn our homes into a place that is more than just our home? Cantor Melissa?
So I'll go. So so my Instagram name is Ima on the Bima, and I take it very seriously because it is very true. I wear a lot of hats as a mommy, clergy, as a mommy Cantor, and you know, especially since March, the lines have been very blurred between my workspace and my home space, and you all know that because you've all watched me do services on Zoom and on Facebook Live, and now of course we're doing some hybrid of live streaming back at the shul. But the thing is that, you know, at the same table that we eat dinner on is the same table that my kids go to school at, and it's the same table that I daven from. And so it's a, you know, it's a lot. And so how do you blur that space? That space is so blurred right now than it normally is. And so, you know, if you ask my littlest one, he'll tell you, oh, mommy's doing services at the kitchen table tonight. That means, he says, oh, she's in the chapel tonight. But if I go to the dining room where I am here, I'm in the sanctuary because it's fancier. It's about making it's about making special places. You have to create the space in order to say, this is where we're going to pray tonight. This is where we're going to worship and create this holy space. And, you know, I would even say during this time of Elul, bring your family together and say, okay, this space in our home where we're going to watch our services and participate in services is going to be where we're going to come together as a family and we're going to pray together. Say a Shehachayanu for the moment. Say, this is where we're going to do this. It's a special moment. It's the only time that you've ever done this before. And so create that specialness so that when you do come together on the holidays, you've designated that spot as the holy place. That's your makom, that's your holy place. And it becomes special in that way. And you'll remember it, you know, God willing, when we're back all together in 5782, and this is a year of the past, you'll remember that space was holy for that moment in time.
Thank you. Rabbi Jordana?
One thing that we're doing is IHC always goes out to Camp Gucci for a special retreat and service out there on Rosh Hashanah. So we will actually be going out there to record the services, and we are going to invite people to go outside if they have a place that is near them that is a special outdoor place for them. We are going to invite people to get as close to nature as they can and make that a sacred place in that way. So it's a little bit similar to what Cantor Melissa was talking about, but it also has a little bit of a twist on it to be outside. And also remember that those can be some of the holy places as well.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question, I believe. Alan Hamburger wrote, what potential do you think the virtual world will have for non-affiliated families to attend services which they may not otherwise have experienced? Rabbi Sendrow?
Several of my Florida congregants have inquired about attending our services this year. They're not officially unaffiliated, but they would like to join services with Shaarey Tefilla. So this year that's possible. That's one of the silver linings to the cloud of COVID. Same thing applies to families. We have family members who are scattered across the country who have joined us, including my own cousin in Maryland, joined us for Shabbat services since we took them online. So I think there is a special opportunity this year for people who may be geographically distant or simply are not connected locally to synagogues to easily experience what we have to offer on the holiday season.
Anyone else have a response to add to that, or?
Yeah, I wanted to mention I live streamed from this place specifically because you can see the holy corner of the living room that I've set up with a mizrach behind me to be our virtual eastern wall that we're all virtually facing, and I've had the shofar behind me since Elul started. I love this question about the non-affiliated because it's so discomfiting. They are by definition unaffiliated, so I don't know who I'm not reaching, and all I can say is it's a challenge. I like that, in a way, virtual services drop that barrier to entry. There's none of that awkwardness of feeling like, am I going to fit in here before I step over the threshold into whatever congregation I'm visiting. But then again, whatever we're doing, there are still unaffiliated people, and it is aleinu, it's on us to find a way to be relevant to them.
Thank you.
Right.
Margo, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, everybody. I'm going to address that question too when I talk about resources that are available from the Federation, because this year we are particularly rich with resources for as many people in our community as possible to access religious observance, because so many things are accessible to us this year in different ways. But first of all, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Marcia Goldstein for co-creating this program with me, and David Heilbronn for technical and content support, and Jeff Lincoln for also his tech support in the background. And I really want to thank this panel of clergy because, you know, there's nothing else going on. It's a pretty quiet time. And they have taken time at a particularly challenging time of year, at a particularly challenging time in history to join us and share their thoughts with us. So thank you so much. We have a High Holidays resource. I will get to that in a minute, but I have to do some shameless self-promotion of Federation events that are coming up. First of all, one of the things that is not happening as easily this year is many of our congregations do drives for Popsy's Pantry and provide resources to Popsy's Pantry as they're entering services, like all kinds of things. That's not happening as much this year, but there will be 2 drop-off times before the High Holidays. More information will be forthcoming. But on Tuesday, September 15th and Wednesday the 16th from 9 to 2, you can drop off items for Popsy's Pantry at Jewish Family Service. There'll be a place to leave those items. And that would be a huge help to them this year as they continue to serve more and more people in our community who have need. Another way to help our community is to volunteer for Super Sunday, first ever virtual Super Sunday. Our one phone-a-thon, biggest fundraiser of the year, is September 13th. It's a powerful day when volunteers and donors and community members come together to make a difference. And if you are interested in volunteering for Super Sunday, you don't even have to put on shoes this year. Like, what more could you ask for? You can go to our webpage, and there's a place where you can sign up to volunteer. And if you haven't made your gift to the 2020 annual campaign, of course, we would love for you to do that. So go to jewishindianapolis.org//Super Sunday. If cooking is on your mind, we have an event we're sharing with many federations around the country featuring Michael Solomonov, who's an acclaimed restaurant owner and James Beard Award-winning chef. He's hosting a Rosh Hashanah virtual cooking class at 8 p.m. on Monday, the 14th of September via Zoom. You can also find out, it's free, but you can find out more information about that and get the shopping list and everything also on our webpage. And then if you're a fan of the show Schitt's Creek, on Wednesday, September 16th, Jewish Federations of North America, I said it online. Jewish Federations of North America is inviting the community to the communal kvel. Kvel means to gather and be happy together at 1:30 p.m. Again, you can save your virtual seat also on our webpage. And last but definitely not least, props to my colleagues. We have, much like we did for past holidays, developed a Rosh Hashanah, High Holidays, Elul and High Holidays resource page. So you can get to everything our community is offering, plus what's going on nationally, all kinds of resources through our webpage. If you go to our front page, you'll see High Holidays, or go to jewishindianapolis.org/High Holidays. Right now it's loaded with Elul materials, and then we're building out all the way through to the end of Simchas Torah. But going back to, we know about 50% of the Indianapolis Jewish community is not affiliated, connected directly to a synagogue or an institution. You're right, Rabbi Justin, it's super hard to find people if you don't know that they're there, but we know they're there and we want to connect with folks, and we try multiple ways of doing that, all of us, to build our community. And this year, you know, if you want to attend High Holidays in more than one congregation, you can do that, and you can access that through the synagogues themselves, but through our webpage. So I just want to thank everybody for this evening. I hope it was helpful for folks as we start to center ourselves, getting ready for the holidays. We want to wish everybody a safe, a happy new year, one that is filled with just a lot of good things, because we all need it now. These are really difficult times on so many fronts. So I want to thank everybody. This concludes our program, and take care. Thanks, everyone.
Shana Tova, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.